Good morning, Remembrance Community Church. It is really good to be gathering both here in person and online. My name is Pastor Kenny. If I haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet, I want to. If you're online, fill out the web connect card thing that Brittany was talking about. We genuinely want to know you. I just want to kick off our time this morning, if you will allow me, with just a moment of vulnerability. I've had a really busy last couple weeks. I had this time of sabbatical that was awesome. I work for the fire department and get to do this as well as a bivocational pastor. And I took 3 months off break at the church, and at the same time I got injured and had to be off work from the fire department for 3 months, just time off. And it was wonderful. I mean, it was hard because God was dealing with a lot of things. And then I came back to church, and then I went back to light duty at the fire department, which is 10 hours a day plus 2 hours of driving of computer data entry. If you want to know how to suck the life and soul out of Kenny Keating, that's it. And at the same time, you know, I have all these other things I want to do and goals. I have projects at my house and projects at church, and I just had a really busy past few weeks. And I woke up this morning feeling really rushed, because though I've spent time praying and working on this message all week, it still felt disjointed and unfinished. And I felt like my fight or flight adrenaline system was kicking into gear. And truth be told, I feel it right now. And if you want to know what that feels like, here's how I'll describe it. It feels like you're having a panic attack that normally would take like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but then you just spread it out throughout the whole day. So it's this low level just adrenaline. It feels like when you wake up from that nightmare where you realize that you woke up late for class or for work, or did anyone else have that nightmare, like just this like panic, and then you feel like you're in a hurry. And truth be told, I know this feeling really well. If my soul had a mascot, you know, like on Facebook, I never do these, but you know, on Facebook sometimes they'll do that thing like if you were a Harry Potter character, which character would you be? I never do those. But if my soul was a Disney character, I think I would be the hurried hare from Alice in Wonderland. Just roaming around frantically, hopping around, singing, I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye, I'm late. I have what you could call a frenetic soul. If you're like, that's a cool word, I wonder what that means. Me too, I looked it up. It says, marked by a fast and energetic, disordered, or anxiety-driven activity. It's me. It's actually a thing. It's called hurry sickness. In psychology today, it's a kind of a periodical and modern psychology kind of a grounding board. They describe it like this. It's a behavior pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiousness, an overwhelming and continual sense of urgency. And experts are saying that it affects 100% of the people alive today. We all are experiencing hurry sickness. It might not be the same exactly as mine. You might have a different experience. But for me, I feel always behind. Like I have to catch up for lost time. I have a hard time slowing down or sitting still. I start projects and then I start more projects before I'm done. And if I'm taking a break and like walking on the beach or just hanging out, my adrenaline kicks in and starts racing, and I have a hard time being present in the moment and enjoying where I'm at. It's called hurry sickness. In John Ortberg's book called Soul Keeping, he talks about this experience he had with his mentor, Dallas Willard, who's also, I don't know him, but by reading his books, he's a mentor of mine and many of us. He says, Dallas pointed out to me once that there's a world of difference between being busy and being hurried. Being busy is an outward condition, a condition of the body, and it occurs when we have many things to do. And busyness is inevitable in modern culture. I mean, if I said raise your hand if you're busy, who's not going to raise their hand, right? It's like if Joe Dirt, like life's a garden, dig it, right? That's just the way that it is. But he says being hurried is an inner condition, a condition of the soul. It means to be so preoccupied with myself and my life that I'm unable to be fully present with God, with myself, and with other people. I'm unable to occupy the present moment. Busyness migrates to hurry when we let it squeeze God out of our lives. I cannot live in the kingdom of God with a hurried soul, he says. I cannot rest in God with a hurried soul. Truth be told, this isn't brand new. In the early 20th century, like early 1900s, Carl Jung, who's considered one of the fathers of modern psychology, wrote, "Hurry is not the devil." No, he says, hurry is not of the devil. Hurry is the devil. When I read through the Gospels, here's what I see. Jesus was busy doing his Father's business, right? You guys agree? He was busy. He had a lot to do. But he was never in a hurry. Matter of fact, in Mark 4, there's this story, it's beautiful, where Jesus spends all night with his disciples and he heals Peter, one of the leader disciples. He heals his mother-in-law, and she actually comes back from being really sick and starts, making them meals. And then all of a sudden, the whole town starts showing up at her house. Just the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And all night long, he's just praying for people and healing people. Just a night of intense, radical ministry. And he's Jesus, but he humbled himself and became human. And so you can imagine just how wiped out he was. And it says early the next morning, he went off to be alone with his Father. Solitude time. And then Peter frantically comes up to him and goes, "What are you doing? We got momentum here. I know you came to, you've been telling us, we're going to build the kingdom. The time is now. We got to go back and there's more people." You know how Jesus answered him? He goes, "Nah, dog." Well, he didn't say that. That's my translation. He goes, no. We're going to go on to the next town. And then we're going to go on to the next town. See, Jesus was busy, but he wouldn't buy into the frenetic Peter's demand for him to start hurrying. Tim Keller is another kind of hero, guru, author that I love to listen to. He was a pastor in New York. He was the co-founder of the Gospel Coalition. If you don't know who that is, don't worry about it. But he's a big deal. He's a legit Christian conservative dude. He's not out there. And he said in an interview recently that I was watching, he said, one of the problems that we're facing is that we have become the least contemplative generation in history. Now, contemplation has some weirdness in Eastern religion and stuff like that, and New Age. So when people hear this, sometimes they freak out. Don't freak out is what I'm saying. There is a weird wing of this, but there's a very healthy Christian wing of this. Because contemplation simply means prolonged, deep thinking or processing. And the Bible uses the word meditation. That's what it is. It's deep, prolonged thinking or processing. It's what Jesus did early in the morning after a busy night. He got alone to just process. It's when you see Jesus walking with his disciples and then you realize like, oh, he let them get ahead of him for a while so he could walk alone and just think and process. Like, it's contemplation. And Tim Keller says we're the least contemplative generation in history. And if you think about it, like Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but now we can control time, can't we? We could keep the light on as late as we want. We could spend as much, we could control our day. But is that always healthy? Not if we don't discern and be wise with it, right? And most of us aren't. I'm not. I mean, how many of us, we get up as late as we can, as we sleep as long as we can. We get up as late as we can, and then we jump right into hurried, and we do one thing after another. And then how many of us honestly don't like to lay down and let your mind kind of run, so you stay up later than you should doing something, watching Netflix or playing video games or reading a book or something else, doing a project, until you're so tired that you know, now I'm going to lay down my head on the pillow and not have to think and just fall right asleep. And then you wake up later than you should, and you do more and more, right? This is the pace that we live at. Life's a garden. Dig it. This is our commonality. You're not alone. It's not healthy. We don't make time in our busy, hurried lives to be still enough, undistracted enough to deeply think or process all the stuff. I used to think if you lay down your head at night and you can't fall right asleep, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. That's called contemplative thinkers processing. Like, maybe that's exactly what you need. Back before the light bulb, you know what? People used to wake up when the rooster crowed, right? And they would go to sleep like when the sun went down. I mean, you ever read like these old pastors and they're like, I get up 4 a.m. and I pray for 2 hours. Yeah, because you went to sleep at 6 p.m. You got 10 full hours of sleep and you can't sleep anymore. So you're up at 4 and the rooster hasn't crowed. So you're just spending time praying. Like, that's why it's so weird to us. And we're like, I can't do it. Yeah. You can't stay up till 1, binge watching, whatever, and then wake up at 4. You can't. It's a different time. But we need to figure it out. We got to figure out somehow. There's actually a thing that's part of this, like what you're experiencing when you lay your head down. It's called defragmentation. Right? That's a computer nerd technology. Like when your computer starts to slow down and you delete some files and then it gets all really choppy and now your computer's working over. That's why it's not really slow, it's just busy. It's doing what you're asking it to do, and it's also sifting through all of the things and all of the programs at the same time, and so it slows down, and so you can actually defragment your computer. It's supposed to help, and then if that doesn't work, you just add more RAM, and then it gets fat, right? As humans, we don't have more RAM. But we do need to somehow defragment. When I was on my sabbatical, people were asking me, it's 3 months long and I needed it. I waited too long. I was just fragmented. I was fragmented. And I was telling people like for the first, half of it, like how's your sabbatical going? I feel like I'm just defragmenting. And what that would actually look like was like I would wake up early and I would sit on this round chair and I would just sit there. And I had books next to me, but I just would set them down and just sit there and with God and just defragment. It was just like this, I just let the thoughts sift through. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm just sitting here with you, God. After a while, I realized I didn't know what to do, but God knew exactly what he was doing. He was defragmenting my soul. It was so important. And so here's the point. I know I woke up this morning this is all defragmented, my message. How does this come together? Here's the point. here's the big idea, and then we're going to dig into Psalm 46 that I believe is going to help us with this process. It's going to be a practice where we can actually do something healthy about this. The big idea is this. Somehow, we need to make time to sit undistractedly before God with all our stuff and allow it to get reoriented by the truth. In our ordinary day, maybe that means we need to wake up a little bit earlier and just sit on our chair and just sit there and think with God or process with God. Maybe it looks like instead of filling up all of our time with distraction, you're driving, maybe, like turn off the country music or the podcast or whatever it is and just let there be silence. Let yourself defragment with God. Maybe it's at your workspace. You just need to turn off some of the distractions. Maybe you need to go for a walk and leave your phone at home. Maybe you need to turn your phone off for an hour a day and one whole day a week. Like, I can't do that, right? I work on my phone. No, 6 days of work and 1 day of rest is God's prescription, right? You can turn your phone off 1 day a week. When I point my finger, there's 3 pointing back at me. I don't do that yet. I'm going to try. I know. But let me unpack what I mean by the truth, because I said we need to make time to sit undistractedly before God with all our stuff, right? You know what that is, like your thoughts, your worries, your issues, your to-do list, your dream board, your stuff. And allow it all to get reoriented to the truth. And biblically speaking, the truth has at least 2 aspects to it. So I want to share those with you so we're talking the same language. So there's the gospel truth. The gospel truth is simply this. This is how I would define it. The gospel truth is who God is. It's what God has done. And it is what God has promised. Just sit before who God is, what God has done, and what God has promised. It's the gospel truth. And the second aspect is the authoritative truth. The authoritative truth, I would define it like this. When God from heaven looks down and everything that God sees, the way that God sees what he sees, that's true. However God sees it, that's what the truth is. It's the authoritative truth because he's the authority. The way he sees it, if I disagree with him, guess who's wrong? And we just need to sit undistractedly before God and meditate on who he is, on what he's done, on what he's promised, and remember that the way he sees things is what's true. And so we're trying to get that more. Like, I want to see things the way you see things, God. And so in this, somehow we need to make time to sit undistractedly before God with all our stuff and allow it to get reoriented to who God is, what God has done, what God has promised, and the way God sees things, the truth. And in the Bible, there's 150 of these, and they're called the Psalms. Thomas Merton says that the Psalms are songs of men who knew who God is. We've been saying like the Psalms give us language for prayer and permission for prayer. In other words, in all of these different circumstances, in lament and in praise and in worry and in anxiety and in busyness and in times of feeling like you're attacked or you're a victim, and all of these different circumstances, we can come to God and reorient our souls in those messy issues, in the stuff. We could reorient our souls to the truth. That's what the Psalms are. And so I want to invite you to turn to Psalm 46. And by the way, Jesus talked about this in John 17 as you're turning there. He says, he's praying, he goes, Father, sanctify them with the truth. Sanctification is how we get transformed to be more like Jesus. Make them more like Jesus by the truth, by sitting and in this process of reminding and reorienting and defragging and contemplating and meditating on who God is and what God's done and what God has promised. Paul in Romans 12, he says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Like, how do you do that? This is how you do that. You sit before him. You sit with him. The Psalms are a great companion for that. They're a great guidebook for that. To sit with him and process and reorient yourself to the truth. Isaiah, the Old Testament prophet, in Isaiah 26:3 goes, you will keep the mind that is dependent on you in perfect peace. How many of you guys would love it if your mind would have perfect peace? Your soul would just like be unhurried and just at peace. That's what I need. And he's like, God will keep the mind that is dependent on you. If we could be dependent on him, and we would have perfect peace, for it is trusting in you. When we reorient ourselves to the truth about who God is and then settle into that, the way that, what we're defining right then is what it looks like to trust God. We're trusting God. And Psalm 46 is all about trusting God in the middle of turmoil. Read with me, Psalm 46. In Psalm 46, you'll notice it has three stanzas, three sections, and then it ends with this word, Selah. I want you to think about, as we read this, think about my heart racing, your heart racing. Think about the hurriedness and the anxiety and the, I got too much to do and not enough time to do it and I'm never good enough and all the things. And think about that as your heart racing and then you entering into this psalm and reorienting your heart to a new pace. I want you to hear these three stanzas as heartbeats. Lub-dub. That's how your heart beats. I mean, that's my interpretation of it. Lub-dub, lub-dub. If I had a stethoscope right now and I listened to your heart, unless it's unhealthy, that's what I would hear. Lub-dub, lub-dub. For mine, it would be lub-dub, 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 right? This is three heartbeats. Lub-dub, pause, Selah. Lub-dub, pause, Selah. Lub-dub, pause. Let's allow our hearts to be reoriented by God's word. He says, God is our refuge and strength, a helper who is always found in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not be afraid. Though the earth trembles and the mountains topple into the depths of the sea, though its waters roar, the water roars and foams, and the mountains quake with its turmoil. Selah. So the psalmist paints a picture of peace in the midst of turmoil. Who is our God? That's where he begins. Who is our God? There's a cheesy saying that would make a great bumper sticker that I would never put on my car, but it is true. So cheesy. It says, don't tell God how big your problems are. Tell your problems how big your God is. Selah. Right? Of course, you could tell God. He wants you to be able to tell you how big it's not perfectly true. But the idea is if you focus on who God is, that's where the peace comes from. So who is our God according to this psalmist? He says our God is our refuge. That's a condition or a place of being safe, sheltered from pursuit, danger, or troubled. God is our refuge. God is our strength. You may feel weak. You may be unable, and that is okay. That's not where the peace comes from, is you overcoming your weakness. but God is your strength. He's a helper who is always found in times of trouble. Isn't that an amazing promise? Like, oh man, I'm having trouble. I need to find God, but I can't find him. No, he's always found. You might not find him, and he might not, do for you he might not still the heart you might not experience exactly what you were expecting. He might not meet all your expectations, but he's there. He's there. He'll always be found. Do you guys want to know what the least quotable thing that Jesus ever said was? I mean, this is I've never seen anybody put this on Facebook. No one ever quotes Jesus with this. He goes, in this world, you will face trouble. I thought it was a big Christian, there's no more troubles and it's all good and he fixes everything. No, Jesus is like, here, let me drop a truth bomb on you. You could, tweet this. In this world, you will face trouble. To expand on it, it's John 16:33 says, Jesus goes, I have told you these things, the world's going to get worse before it gets better. That's pretty much the things. I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In me you may have peace. You will have trouble in this world. You will have suffering in this world, but be courageous. I've conquered the world, is what Jesus says. In times of trouble, God is our refuge and strength, a helper who is always found, it says. And then he says, therefore, that's a conjunction that conjoins it to what came before, right? Therefore, because it's true, because you look at God and this is who he is, therefore, the result of remembering these things about God, reorienting yourself to the truth, is peace in the middle of turmoil. Not the removal of turmoil, but peace in the middle of it. And he says, I won't be afraid. I won't be frenetic. I won't be anxious. I won't be in a hurry. I won't overthink things to death. Raise your hand if that's you. I won't worry. And by the way, even though there are some things going on, which he's describing, that if you were going to worry, now's the time. The mountains are crumbling and the seas are doing weird things that they're not supposed to do. Things are, if you're going to worry, go ahead. But he says, no, but I won't be afraid. But why? Because I've reoriented myself to the truth of who God is. And then he goes on in verse 4 and he goes, there's a river. There's a river. Its streams delight the city of God, the holy dwelling place of the Most High. And God is within her. God is within this city. And she will not be toppled. This city will not be toppled. God will help her when the morning dawns. Nations rage, kingdoms topple, the earth melts when he lifts his voice. But the Lord of armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. What he's describing here is what theologians call the river of peace. There's a river that runs through the city where God is present with his people. It's the stronghold, it's the refuge that he's saying run to. It's a description of being in God's presence. Right now, we've built a tabernacle. That's a sacred space to hang out with God. But the reality is everywhere we go, Jesus is our tabernacle. He's always with us. Anytime, any day, always found. He's present with us. We're not always aware of it. We're always too busy, frantic. But he's always right there. And the river of peace, the Hebrew word here for river is continuous flowing stream. You know how some rivers, like you drive up to, Big Bear or somewhere, and it's like you go at a certain time of year and the river is dry? It's a dry riverbed. There's a word for that in Hebrew. He doesn't use that here. This is a continuous flowing river stream. There is a source of life and peace that is always available. And this is talking about, I believe, making time to sit in God's presence, to sit next to the river. Psalm 1 talks about that. A tree that's planted next to this same type of river, this flowing river that's always flowing, is like a blessed tree. He says, in his dwelling place. This river is about his dwelling place, a place where we can dwell with God. In his city, where the stream of his Holy Spirit flows. It's very poetic, right? But we get what it means. And God is within these sacred spaces. And God creates these sacred spaces because he wants to be with us. In my experience, my round chair becomes a sacred space when I sit there with God. Yesterday I was jogging. I've been doing that. I hurt myself, so I can't lift weights, which is hard for me. I've been doing that since I was 13, right? So I don't turn into like a depressed animal. I've been jogging like 6 miles a day. I used to have this philosophy that I should jog only when a big dog is chasing me. But desperate times, and so I've been jogging, and so I got like my iWatch, whatever, Apple Watch. I don't wear it up here because I don't know how to turn it off. That's if you want to know like how techie I am. I don't know how to turn it off, and I'm afraid someone's gonna call me and it'll ring. So I wear my old watch. But I'm jogging. I have to have my phone because I can't figure out how to just listen to my ear pods with my phone. So with my watch. So I have to have my phone. I got too many things going on. But anyways, I'm running, right? I'm running like Forrest Gump. I'm running. And I got to this point where I don't know, like I'm not techie, like somehow my phone went off to where I'm not on Wi-Fi, it won't like keep playing. And at first it kept playing the same song over again, right? That's annoying, but it's music, so I just went with it, right? And then it just turned off completely. And I was like running, and I was like stopped in my tracks, and I was like, I can't run, I don't have any more music. And then I remembered what I was like actually gonna talk to you guys about, and I was like, oh, you could run and just be silent and like just spend this time with God. And it was so good. I just started doing it. Like I was running, right? I got like 2 blocks, and then I realized I also have music stored on my phone, so I switched back. It was only like 2 blocks, but it was a really good 2 blocks. And there's a dwelling place in his city where the streams of the Holy Spirit flow, and God is within these sacred spaces. And God creates these sacred spaces. And sometimes it's just like your phone doesn't work mysteriously. But what if we got more intentional? And you got an hour drive, and at least the first 15 minutes you just turn everything off and just go, all right, God, you have my attention. I don't know what to say, but just let me think with you. Let me process. What if you got up an hour early? By the way, you might have to go to bed an hour earlier too, right? That's okay. What if we change some things? Because we are hungry to be in God's presence, to make space. Then he goes, the nations rage, the kingdoms topple, the earth melts. Like back then that was probably dramatic. Like right now that just sounds like the evening news. Amen? Like I know he was trying to be dramatic, but I'm like, I totally get that. That's what life feels like right now. But God is within his city and his holy dwelling place, and she will not topple. Isn't that good? It'll all topple, but his presence won't. That's why it's a stronghold and a refuge and a place to run. And those who find it, the psalmist says, those who find it, who spend time with God in his presence, will learn, it'll take time, to delight in it. Jonathan Edwards was this old school pastor, American pastor, it was during the Puritan time, in the 1800s. And when he was 18 years old, he wrote his first sermon, that at least that was recorded, and it was on Christian delight or Christian happiness. And he had 3 points, and his 3 points are wonderful. They're still talked about today. He says, here's my 3 points of why, this is why we can have delight in the middle of craziness of life. He says, number 1, because our bad things will turn out for good. As Christians, that's what we orient to. Even our bad things will turn out to good. Our good things can never be taken from us. And the best things are yet to come. 18-year-old Jonathan Edwards gets it. Our bad things will turn out for good. That's actually very biblical. We like to say around here, we like to say, God never wastes a hurt. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever the troubles are, God won't waste it. Paul says in Romans 8, he goes, all things work for the good, eventually, of those who love God and are called according to his purposes. Like, that's not saying like, oh, it's all good, bro. Like, you're going through hard times, like, it's all good. And we don't go into, the hospital bed of somebody who's struggling and go, all things work for the good. Like, I get that. There's a time and a place, but it is true. God has a plan. In this world, you will face troubles. When you're facing troubles, the psalmist says, run to God and find refuge in him. And somehow, in his presence, even in the midst of troubles, he'll reorient your heart to delight in his presence. As we reorient ourselves to the truth, like, this too shall pass. God's got this. Even our bad things will turn to good. Our good things can never be taken away. Also, just a few verses later in Romans 8, Paul goes that you could be confident of this, that there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus. Not death, not life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, not the future, nor powers, nor heights or depth, nor any other thing in creation. The good things can never be taken from us. And the best things are yet to come. If you get a chance to use our bathroom at the HQ, there's a plaque hanging up on the wall that says exactly that. The best is yet to come. If you've seen it and go like, where'd they get that? It comes from Jonathan Edwards' sermon. That's why I put it up there. I don't do much decorating. I like to build stuff, but I'm not a decorator. But I put that plaque up because it reminds me the best is yet to come. And in case you're thinking, oh, yeah, bro, I know that's how you usually talk to your pastor, right? I don't know why I'm saying bro a lot. Yeah, you don't know my story. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the mess my life is in right now. You don't know the troubles I've got. And that's why he ends this passage. He goes, no, the Lord, he already said, there's this river, that's cool. It's very poetic and romantic. The Lord of armies is with us, he says. You know, sometimes when you're struggling, you need Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, to come sit with you. He's like the nicest guy and he won't judge you. It's like, I just need some Mr. Rogers right now. But sometimes I've found you don't want Mr. Rogers because your problems are uglier than that. You need Rambo. I mean, have you ever been through a time like, yeah, Mr. Rogers is here, cool. You better get behind me so you don't get your butt kicked too, right? And that's when he goes like, no, the Lord of armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. You know, pause on that, bro. And then he goes, come see the works of the Lord, who brings devastation on the earth. He makes wars cease throughout the earth. He shatters bows and cuts spears to pieces. This is what Rambo, the God, does, right? He sets wagons ablaze. And then the Lord calls out. He goes, stop fighting and know that I'm God. Some translations say, be still and know that I'm God. The Hebrew connotation is stop fighting. Be still, stop fighting and know that I'm God. Exalted among the nations, exalted on the earth, the Lord of armies is with us. He says it again, in case you were feeling, starting to get scared again. The Lord of armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Selah. And now the language of the Lord bringing devastation to the earth. That's like weird, right? That's like, what's that about? Well, it's a well-known reference to the Hebrew people of the day of the Lord. There's going to be a day when Yahweh, God, the Lord of armies, comes and swiftly and finally deals with all that is evil, with all that is causing trouble on this earth. He will deal with it one day, finally. That's what the psalmist is talking about. Jesus goes, in this world you will face troubles. He's talking about the time frame until he comes back. In this world you will face troubles, but have peace in me, for I've conquered the world. He's talking about the day of the Lord. Like one day it is finished. It just hasn't played itself out all the way. And we still live in that tension. He will make wars cease, it says. In Revelation, remember it says there's going to be no more sorrow, no more pain. He's going to make the wars cease. Guess what? The other day I had this weird experience where there's no more news, and then guess what came back? Guess what's back, guys? 2021. Car chases. There was a car chase on the news. Like what? There's no political fighting? Because it's a slow day. There's car chases are back. That's big news. But Jesus is, and this psalmist is saying, no, one day all that stuff's going to be gone. All the troubles. There'll be trouble in this world, but take heart, I have conquered the world. It says he cut the weapons used to destroy each other with. That's what he's going to do. He breaks the bows and the spears. Bows can get you from long range, right? He breaks those. It's like, the sniper rifle. He gets you from long range. He breaks the bows. Also, he breaks the spears. That's where they stab you, right? That's where the prison shank happens. That's close. That's up close and personal. The things that are hitting you from far away. The things that are hitting you from up close. And the wagons, those are the things that brought the catapult flingers and the flame flingers back then, the Humvees and the tanks, the weapons of war. Nah, he just burns those all. They're gone. And this is a promise that Israel knew from the prophets of old, and we still look forward to today. When Jesus returns, he's going to do that. And until he returns, we run to him. In the middle of all of the stuff. And he's our strength. And he's our refuge. And if we'll sit there long enough, the promise is that we'll move from anxiety and hurry to delight. Because we reorient ourselves to the truth, and we can have the worship team come back up. And then in this passage, the Lord confidently speaks and he goes, stop fighting and know that I'm God. It seems like the psalmist is using a language of war to describe the inner turmoil of the soul, which I know. Maybe you know too. This resonates with me deeply. Sometimes I just need the Lord to speak into my soul and say, stop fighting. Do you guys ever see the movie Good Will Hunting? So it's like Robin Williams was like this psychologist, therapist, and Matt Damon was like this troubled youth. He had a really gnarly story. And he was like really smart, and he overcame all these things in life with his brain, but you just see like there's like something messed up with this kid. And Robin Williams' character like takes a interest in him. When everyone else wants to give up on him, he just kind of spends time with him and sifts through there. And after a while, he's spent over a year with him, just at regular basis, getting to know him, building trust. And at one moment, the moment probably in the story if you've seen it, Robin Williams' character just looks at him and he goes, "It's not your fault." And Matt Damon's character is like, "I know, right? That's like mind knowledge. Like, I know, I'm smart, right? I know." And then he goes again, "It's not your fault." "I know. It's not your fault." "I know. It's not your fault." "I know. It's not your fault." "Don't do this to me, man." So he's like starting to get to where it's uncomfortable. "It's not your fault." Eventually he breaks down. He cries. He lets it go. He releases it. Because Robin Williams is really saying what? Stop fighting it. Because the Lord of armies is with us, he says. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Before we get into worship, and I know I've taken longer, I was right. This is defragmented, and it is what it is, but I believe the Lord wants to speak to us. And so I want to just sit in one final Selah together. And I want to ask, does your soul need rest? Does your soul need peace? Do you need a stronghold? Do you long for the type of God's presence that this psalmist describes, where you find peace and delight? Do you need God to answer you? Well, we got to take some time to stop fighting, to be still, and to know who he is, to reorient ourselves to the truth. That's what he's saying. Stop fighting and reorient yourself to the truth. Remember who God is. Remember what God has done. Remember what God has promised. Be still. Reorient to the fact that he is God. So this week's practice is I want you guys there's so much more in Psalm 46 that you're going to find. Read it. Meditate on it. Pray it. When I say meditate on it, I just want to give you a couple of suggestions and then we'll get into worship. Don't do all of these. I'm just giving you some suggestions of how you might do this. Pick one. Turn your phone off and your devices off for an hour per day and one day this week. Maybe do that. Turn off the radio in the car or on your walk or at your workspace. Go to bed earlier than you plan to and just let yourself sit in the uncomfortable. In physical training, we call it embrace the suck. Because it's good for you. It's hard, but it's good for you. Just lay there and let your mind wrestle. You know what says the God of Jacob? There's a story in the Bible where God wrestles with Jacob, and Jacob won't let go of him, and he says, I won't let go of you until you bless me. Maybe do that before you go to bed. Sit in the uncomfortable. Set a timer for 15 minutes, maybe once a day. For me, that's the minimum amount of time that it takes for me to get into the contemplation process. And for your prayer, here's a couple suggestions. Maybe you need to write out what you're experiencing right now, but use war language. You know, right? You're a mom. Like right now, my toddler is like an army that like is besieging the walls, surrounding me, and never gives up. Right? My boss is like like it's between you and God. You write what you want. Write a list of all the things you're worried about, troubling you, stressed out about, and ask God to be with you, and ask God to help you. That's all I have for you. Selah.